Love what you do and be resilient? What? Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Dupree, scouring the globe to bring you stories of courage, passion, and resilience. If I could sum up this podcast into one word, I would use empathy. Now let's get inspired. Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I am your host, Brett Dupree, here to drop some knowledge on your what? Today I have a fun interview with an entrepreneur. However, first is the part of the podcast where I talk about what's going on in my life, because if I can't be vulnerable with you, how can I ask my guests to be vulnerable in the same? Yesterday was an amazing day for me. Yes, if you've been paying attention to me and listened to multiple podcasts, you probably know that I created a Toastmaster group called the Lightworkers Toastmasters. It started, first meeting was actually July 24th. The interesting thing about yesterday is this is the end of the Toastmaster year as of June 30th, 11:59 and 59 seconds. It's my last second as the president for the Lightworker Toastmasters, as I have been the main lead of the club since July 24th, that first meeting. I have been setting the energy, setting the stage, and ending every meeting with a positive message and leading the club. Now I take a step back and start, leading the club from behind. And hopefully the new president, who honestly I think will, because I handpicked her because I think she's been dedicated to the club and she's awesome and she's been taking pictures, and just the way she has been involved has been awesome, and I think that she will do a good job. But it amazes me that just a year ago at this moment, heck, a year ago yesterday is when I first created the Facebook event and told the world that I am creating the Lightworker Toastmasters. I gave myself 1 month to fully advertise it and hoping that people would start to show up. I had this idea of creating a Toastmaster club for people who wanted to make a difference in their lives. And Toastmasters is a wonderful organization that's helped me a lot in building my self-confidence and has build me up as a leader, and also as a help with my public speaking. If you listen to my podcast, I do not say many ums and ahs. My lexicon is so much better because of it. In fact, the editing my part is one of the easier parts, because honestly, I'm just listening to it and getting rid of some of my breaths. I do say a few of them and some so's, but for most part it's clean, and that's because of Toastmasters. Plus, you can hear that vocal variety, which is so important in keeping people engaged. But I've gained so much from Toastmasters, so I decided to create a Toastmaster club that I wanted to be a part of. And so I did. And the fun part was it has worked out. I've learned a lot in the last year. I learned a lot of what I am capable of. I am capable of leading a group of 20-something people and continue to advertise. And if I truly believe in what I'm doing, I can accomplish more than I thought. When I think of my struggles as a life coach in the past, thinking about it, there's always been this aura of disbelief I probably put out there, that I don't truly believe in myself, even though I know I have the skills. But convincing someone else I have the skills and also taking that responsibility was something that I just was apprehensive, and I'm sure that came off in everything I did. But in Toastmasters, I 100%, not only did I 100% believe in the Toastmaster program, I 100% believed in my ability to run that program and to create a club that could serve people towards their goals. And that 100% belief is important. And I know that is what I am missing in promoting my podcast. That's what I'm missing in promoting my speaking. That's what I am missing in almost anything I do when it comes to advertising myself, is truly having that belief in the back of my head, allowing those doubts to creep in, and that does not help. It doesn't help to set expectations low. You got to set them high and then meet them. And that's what I did with Lightworker Toastmasters, and I met them. And my leadership style wasn't perfect. I made some mistakes. I would say my biggest mistake is not setting expectations early on. I never sat down with the person I asked to help me, Donna Stoles. We never sat down and discussed what a meeting would look like. We just both did it. Both kind of, this is what we're going to do. And then if we had something that kind of clashed, we had a conversation about it. And sometimes she got her way, sometimes I got my way. And we created a club based off that. But the interesting part is the mentors that we have. In Toastmasters, you have sponsors, then you have mentors of clubs. Generally speaking, the sponsors sponsor the club and then disappear, then the mentors come in and run it. The thing is I sponsored this club to be my club. I want to be a member of this club. So I wasn't going to go away and I wasn't going to hand off the reins to someone else. I am the leader of this club. And I should have set those expectations, which did cause some resistance with one of the people. He's an awesome person and he just wasn't a fit. But I think if I set my expectations, he probably would have been more of a fit because he probably felt some apprehension on exactly his role. But the thing is I'm a 9-year Toastmaster. Don is an 10-year Toastmaster. We both know how to run a Toastmaster meeting, so we don't need someone to help us with that. So that was one of my mistakes. Another one I would say would be in January. From July to January, I was doing practically every Toastmaster officer role. I was VP of membership by sending stuff out. I was VP of education in the sense where I was setting all the roles, making up the meeting. I was Toastmaster for most of the meetings, especially at the beginning. I was president. I was leading everything. I was vice president public relations as I was doing most of the public relations PR. I mean, Donna helped as well, especially with the membership stuff and making sure all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. She was a great help. I'm not going to disregard her. I'm not trying to disregard her, but I'm just saying I was doing everything. And once January rolled around, people were starting to take on those roles that I was doing. And I was so happy to get them off my back. But unfortunately, I felt I let it get off my back a little too much and took too big of a step back from the leadership position. And because that's kind of my leadership style, is to sit back and trust people to do their job. Some people did, some people didn't. Some people exceeded, but it's minor because honestly, it's a strong club. We are over 25, 26 members who are mostly regular, attending at least twice a month, I would say. Once or twice a month. We have at least 20 something members who do that. And then some who sprinkle a little bit more. It's been a great experience being able to let go. And I was feeling kind of emotional doing that because honestly, I can't believe it. It's not even been a year. It feels so much longer though. And it's over. But now it's time to take things to a new level. And I need to create this club so it doesn't need me. I need to help facilitate that, and handing over the presidency, someone else is going to be the next step in making sure this club can survive without me. Not that I plan on leaving anytime soon. It's just I can't have the weight of the club on my shoulders every week for the rest of the year or the rest of the time. Plus, it won't survive. I don't have that energy to continue to devote my life to one club. It's just not possible. And the more people who step up, the better. And that's how clubs truly survive, by people stepping up. If you want to talk about stepping up, that brings us to our interview, Naresh Vissa, who another person should have asked how to pronounce his last name, but he has lived a life of stepping up. And I'm sure you're going to enjoy this interview. Let me tell you a little something about him. Naresh Vissa is the founder and CEO of Krish Media and Marketing, a full-service online and digital media and marketing consultancy and agency. He has worked with CNN Radio, JP Morgan Chase, EverBank, the Institution for Energy Research, Houston Rockets, Houston Astros, the American Junior Golf Association, Agora Financial, Agora Publishing. He's also the #1 best-selling author of 50 Shades of Marketing, Whip Your Business into Shape, PODCASTNOMICS, and of course, his new book, From Nobody to Best-Selling Author, How to Write and Publish and Market Your Own Book. He's been featured in USA Today, Yahoo, Bloomberg, MSNBC, Huffington Post, Businessweek, MSN Money, Business Insider, India Today, Hindustan Times. And so here is my interview with Naresh Vissa. Hello, Naresh, and welcome to my podcast.
Hey, good to be here. Looking forward to it, Brett.
So it says here you're an entrepreneur. How'd you get into that?
It's been a journey. It was not something that happened overnight by any means at all. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, going all the way back to probably my high school days. And the reason for that was not because of the liberty or the freedom or the autonomy that entrepreneurs have. I've come to realize that over the years, but the reason that I wanted to become an entrepreneur back then is simply because in school, I'd see some of my friends, the cars they'd drive, the cars their parents would drive, the houses, the nice big houses they'd live in. And almost all of them said, oh, my dad started some company or some business, whether it's a medical practice or a law practice or an oil and gas company, engineering company, you name it. They all kind of said the same thing. So I was thinking, well, why doesn't everybody do that? If this is the type of life and lifestyle you're going to have, why doesn't everyone become an entrepreneur? Because I was very naive. I had no idea what it took to be an entrepreneur. I didn't even know what it was, to be honest, or how difficult it was. And then as I started to learn business towards the end of my high school career and then went to college, took business classes, and two of my majors were in the business school, I started to realize, A, that I wanted to pursue entrepreneurship. And I started to get extremely interested in it. But B, I felt like, man, this is tough. This is legitimately hard. I can't do it. Like, I didn't have any skill set. I didn't have any expertise. So I said, I almost kind of let go of my entrepreneurial dreams and just did what I call a side hobby while I was in college. Never thinking that side hobby would end up launching my entrepreneurial career. It was just kind of a way to make some money on the side. And that side hobby was producing terrestrial radio shows. That's what my side hobby was while I was in college, to just make some money on the side, like I said. So I went to college, went to graduate school, always had this side hobby, and then worked several full-time jobs at big household name companies, and then also at a smaller technology e-commerce company. It's at the technology e-commerce company that I learned the ins and outs of the online and digital marketplace. And I was able to take the skills that I learned there to apply it to my side hobby and to launch a business out of it. And initially when I launched my business, I honestly thought, okay, this is probably just going to be a 1-year thing, and then I'll just go back and get a full-time job maybe if it's not working out. Well, 1 year later, it was working out very well. And I said, well, there's no need to go back and get a full-time job. I can just keep doing this. Long story short, that was about 6 years ago. And now 6 years later, my company, Krish Media and Marketing, it has clients in about 6 different countries. We employ close to 13 people all over the world. Like I said, we've been in business for about 6 years, and last year was our best year to date. And hopefully this year is better than last year. And things have been looking up. Things continue to look up as we move forward into the future.
Congratulations on having your best year.
Thank you. I appreciate that. A lot of it is luck. A lot of it is hard work and figuring things out and working smartly. Almost 6.5 years later, I can say that I'm still very, very pleased with where we are. And when I say we, initially it was just me, and it was always me and where I am. But now it's we, because we have some great talent, great services, great partners, clients, affiliates, etc. And so all has been well for the most part.
Well, they do say that success is where hard work and luck collide and they meet.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is. And I will say my entrepreneurial career is not just Krish Media and Marketing. That's what started my entrepreneurial career on the map. But thanks to my company, Krish Media and Marketing, I've gotten involved with several joint ventures, other partnerships. I started a startup real estate investment company called Krish Capital, which continues to grow, still in startup mode. Things are looking extremely well there, and we're about to get very aggressive on that front over the next 1 to 2 years. Ultimately, my goal is to continue to start businesses and have every new business essentially one up the previous businesses while still running all the businesses. Like I said, Krish Media and Marketing started it all. It's gotten me involved in a lot of different areas, including book writing. I've written, I want to say, maybe 4 or 5 books now to date, and 2 of them have gone on to become #1 bestsellers, and I've sold more than 15,000 copies of all my books combined. And the books all deal with technology, pretty much what my expertise is, which is technology, e-commerce, online and digital, that area.
So you said at the beginning that when you're in college, you started to recognize how hard it was to actually be an entrepreneur. What were your main struggles when you first got started?
Entrepreneurship was very theoretical when I was in high school and when I was in college. everything seemed so easy. And even in college, when I was in several entrepreneurship classes, they just made it seem so easy. When it came down to actually doing my side hobby and more importantly, growing it, because doing the side hobby, okay, yeah, it was fine to make some pocket cash here and there, but to actually grow it, that's when I realized, man, entrepreneurship doesn't just come to you. You have to go out, you have to be a salesman. Doesn't matter what kind of entrepreneur you are. You're going to have to sell something, whether it's a product or a service or yourself. There's a lot of sales involved. There's a lot of business development involved. And that's where I say the luck comes in, because sometimes you have to get lucky, have to catch a break. And I think I've caught several breaks over my career, and I'm hoping to catch several more breaks moving forward in my career. So when I say that entrepreneurship was very difficult when I was in college, people just think, oh yeah, I'm going to start the next Facebook. Or for a young kid, like I was in high school, and you see your friends' parents driving these cars and owning these big houses, and you say, oh, why didn't my parents become entrepreneurs? Why didn't my uncle or aunt become entrepreneurs? This is what I'm going to do. And I think part of it is maturity. As you kind of get older and you mature, you realize that's really hard stuff. Being a salesman is really hard, especially if you're selling your own stuff that you have innovated. There's a lot that you have on your back, riding on your shoulders. I think that answers kind of why entrepreneurship can get so difficult. And it's largely because you have to be able to do everything. You can't be one-dimensional.
So what you're saying is, not like the field of dreams. If you build it, then they'll come. You actually have to do the work.
Yeah, you actually have to do the work. You actually have to work. But I will say one of the benefits of entrepreneurship, especially once you have cash flow coming through the door, one of the benefits is you can hire people to do the work. But to get started, that's the hardest part. To get that first client through that door, that's very hard. And then to get that second after the first is even harder. But once you can start doing that and have cash flow coming in, then you can start outsourcing or hiring people to do a lot of the work. But at the end of the day, it's still your company, unless you really grow it into corporation and you're able to become a chairman and just take a step back and trust the people who work for you. But in my case, I'm a small business guy. I'm just a small business. And most small businesses in the United States, they do anywhere between $60,000 to $600,000. Some of them are one-man businesses, one-man shops that do well below $60,000. So in my case, I fall into that range of six figures. I'm not at a stage to where, like you said, where I can't do any work, where I just hire somebody to run the entire thing and just sit back and enjoy life. I mean, I do enjoy life, don't get me wrong. And I do sit back a lot. I'm still the CEO of Krish Media and Marketing, and I'm still starting other things and running my business. So there's a lot of work and management involved.
So with all that hard work and dedication, how do you keep yourself focused?
There's actually a 4-pronged approach this is just my practice or my opinion. But the first step in focus, I think, is when you're doing stuff that you like doing, then you're just automatically focused. And what I mean by that is, people ask me, they say, hey, Naresh, so what are you going to do when you retire? I tell them, I actually retired 6.5 years ago. My friends who have known me for a while, they say the same thing. They say, you've been retired ever since you graduated from college. And that's largely because A, my lifestyle, but also B, because I've never treated what I do like a job, as something that I have to do. In fact, in my life, most of the stuff I do is stuff that I want to do. When you're doing anything, whether not just your business or work, but whether it's a hobby or playing a sport, if you're doing something that you genuinely like doing or love doing, you're going to be focused. It's automatic. And in my case, even if I had today $1 billion and I didn't have to work another day in my life or make another dollar to support in my life, I'd still be doing the same stuff that I'm doing today on a day-to-day basis. I'd still be doing it for the same pay, simply because I really enjoy the people who I work with. I enjoy my team, both in-house, outside, my clients, my partners, my affiliates. And then most importantly, I love the experience and I love learning. Those go hand in hand, experience and learning. Really enjoy it. And I still feel like there's a lot more to learn and to accomplish. So that's what keeps me focused and that's what keeps me going. As far as the practice goes that I mentioned earlier, I told you number 1 is really passion and liking what you do. But number 2 is I try to stay mentally, spiritually, physically, and emotionally sane and fit. And I think that really not just adds discipline to my work, but it adds discipline to my life. And so what I mean by that is physically, I think it's very important, especially since I have a technology business. So I do the bulk of my work out of home. So it's important to get out, go out for a run. I play basketball every week. I play tennis every week. I do yoga. I just try to stay physically in shape and just physically fit because it just makes me feel better. It makes me feel more accomplished. And there have been numerous studies done that exercise is one of the leading contributors to happiness and obviously a longer life, but to overall happiness, even a bigger contributor than money. Being physically able and fit is very important to not just me, but many entrepreneurs out there and small business people. But then there's a spiritual side. Spiritual is not necessarily God or religion. I happen to be somebody who is religious, but spirituality to me is just simply being thankful for living every day, being thankful for the life that we have. Every day I somehow give thanks in some way. And I think about just how fortunate I am in what I have right now and what I've had in the past and what I've been given. Then as far as being mentally fit goes, mentally to me simply means keeping the brain and the mind, really keeping the mind sharp, exercising the mind. And I do that through my writing. I told you about the books that I write. I also do it through reading. I read a lot of books, of newsletters. I listen to a lot of podcasts, try to be intellectually curious. So that's it tests my mental muscles. And then I also play a lot of chess, whether it's through a chess app or joined a group about 3 years ago, plays live in person every week. So that's how I say mentally fit. And then emotionally fit, that's essentially just being around good people, marrying the right person, having the right friends who bring you up instead of bringing you down, who you have fun with and enjoy being with or around instead of hating them or talking ill about them. I think all four of these areas, mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional, they help keep you focused in all facets of life. And some people tell me, they're like, man, your life is like a schedule. Like, because yeah, it is. I have a calendar and I have certain time slots set aside for all these things that I mentioned to you, but it's what keeps me mentally, or it's what keeps me focused in all facets. And I think it's definitely worth it. And this is what's worked for me extremely well.
I'm curious, in your business life, what has been your biggest quote unquote failure and how did you push through it? Or disappointment would be a better word.
Well, there are disappointments all the time in business. And in my case, I'm very fortunate that I started young. Young meaning no one really knows what's young, what's old these days. But I was in my mid-20s when I got started. So I didn't have kind of the risks, or I had a much larger risk appetite. And I didn't have the strings that are attached to a male provider for a family of 5. It was just me. I was single and I was able to take risks. And so a lot of what I didn't turn out fine. Krish Media and Marketing, yep, that's fine. Krish Capital, my real estate investment firm, going well. So far, so good. A few other ventures that I've been a part of, all right, going fine. Some of the books I wrote, doing well. But I've probably written a book or two that just completely flopped. I've shut down multiple businesses. I want to say probably 4 or 5 different ventures that I've been a part of, partnerships, even some solo things that I didn't work out. But at the end of the day, the only risk that I took was maybe a few $1,000s and time. And as far as risking time goes, I actually have a contrarian view of time because you hear all the time, time is the most precious commodity. Time is all we have. You can never get back time. But the way I see it is time is what gets you the experience. So when you think something is a waste of time, that's essentially taught you that in the future, you're going to make better use of that time. So yeah, you might have wasted your time starting that business that generated negative cash flow, but that's also the experience that will help make you a better business person and a better investor moving forward. A lot of different risks, but at the end of the day, what was I risking? I was risking time, which in turn gave me excellent experience. And this is a type of experience that you can't pay for. You can go pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get an MBA somewhere, and you won't even get this experience. Or you can give your time a little bit of money and learn from that and get an even better education.
Wow. So I see here that you wrote a book on podcasting. What would be the best advice you can give me on growing my podcast?
Well, Podcastnomics I wrote 5 years ago. We're coming up on 5 years. I wrote it at a time when podcasting essentially exploded shortly after my book came out. So Podcastnomics has gone on to sell more than 12,000 copies. The reason why I wrote the book is because podcasting is actually what started Krish Media and Marketing. Our first clients were radio shows, and which in turn to podcast clients. Why did I write about podcasting? How did I get experience in podcasting? Well, when I was working full-time at a company, I started their online radio network, which turned into podcast network. And we were able to grow that podcasting network through three primary revenue drivers. Those three revenue drivers were, number one, the podcast essentially acting as a loss leader that would sell some kind of product or service. So in our case, the company I was working at had actual products that they were selling, and we used the podcast to sell those products. That's what the end goal was. The number two revenue driver was advertising, which is the old school kind of terrestrial radio model. And then the third revenue driver was premium content. So that's paid content that would be available behind a paywall. And so with those three revenue drivers, we were able to turn it into a 7-figure venture. And that kind of gave me a glimpse into online and digital and podcasting. Well, then the next question is, how do you market it? How do you promote it? How do you get people to listen? All these things I talk about in my book, Podcastnomics. I have an entire chapter dedicated to marketing a podcast. It's about probably 15 to 20 different hacks and tips that podcasters should use in order to get their podcast more out there. There's so many different tips and tricks out there. And podcasting has evolved a lot since 2014 when I wrote the book. Probably don't have enough time to go over all of them, and we definitely don't have enough time to go over all of it on this interview. But what I'll do is, for those listening to this show right now, if you visit my website, nareshvissa.com, and get on my mailing list and send me an email saying you heard me on this show, I will send you a free copy of Podcastnomics, and that way you'll have access to all those different tips and strategies. Just make note that, again, the book was written 5 years ago, so it's still very up to date. Still very relevant, but it's not completely up to date.
What's the thing you like most about writing?
Part of my education was in writing. I was editor of the school paper when I was in high school. I was always interested in reporting and journalism. Was kind of, I don't want to say fascinated, but was very serious about learning grammar and writing mechanics when I was in elementary school, middle school, high school. And then one of my degrees undergrad was in broadcast and digital journalism. Just I've always had an interest in it, wanted to report stories, wanted to tell cool stories. And so even though I did kind of go that route. I have experience with Clear Channel Communications and with CNN radio, and worked at several other radio stations and did some work in TV, print, etc. But I didn't fully pursue that. And at the end of the day, largely because of the media convergence of online and digital. But I've always had an interest in writing, always. And I've always wanted to be an author, going way back to my probably middle school days. And so now is probably the best time ever that people can become authors and writers. And I really enjoy it. I feel like I wrote a book called From Nobody to Best-Selling Author. That's my latest book. And it talks about how a nobody like me can become a best-selling author given today's internet digital age that we live in. In my case, you need to have some kind of inspiration. And I really like what I do. I talked about passion earlier. When I like something and I have a lot to say about it, I end up putting it on paper, go ahead and publishing it, put it through the publishing process. When you feel so strongly about something deep down inside and you think the world needs to know about it, that's when you know that you should probably become an author or a writer.
All right. So if somebody really wants to become an author, but they are feeling a little trepidatious about it, what's the number one piece of advice you would give them?
First off, if they're feeling a little apprehensive about it, that's actually a good thing, because the best writing is the writing where you're afraid to hit that publish button or afraid to share it with the world. You probably have something good there. I think that's an extremely important piece of advice, because a friend of mine, he kind of saw what I was doing. He said, hey, I want to come out with a book too. I want to write a book. I said, write a sample chapter, send it to me. So he sent it to me. We brainstormed the topic before based on his expertise and his experiences. I said, look, I think this is great. write a sample chapter. He sent it over to me and I said, this is nothing what we discussed. Like what happened to this story and that story and this news topic. And he said, oh yeah, I don't really want to share those because I don't want people to know about this story, or I don't want my employer to find out about that thing. And I said, well, then you have nothing. That's what made everything interesting. The fact that you don't want to share any of it is you're not going to have a book then. You're not going to have anything entertaining. You're not going to have anything that makes it worthwhile for people to read. So then he said, oh yeah, I guess I can't become a writer because I just don't want to share it. The only thing I'd say is, if you really want to write, the hardest part of writing is actually writing. You need easier than ever now because of transcription technologies. There are free apps out there where you can transcribe yourself speaking. You got to start writing. You got to do it because it's hard. It's very hard. And you don't know how many people have come up to me saying they're working on their book, and I run into them 3-4 years later and they're still on chapter 1. So you just have to start doing it. Just do it.
That is great advice. So we are getting to the end of our podcast, our interview together, our podcast. And one thing I like to ask people is for 1 minute of motivation. You can imagine this something along the lines of, you have a time machine and you get transported down to your 8-year-old self, and you want to give yourself the advice that it takes to take you to the next level. But unfortunately, you only have a minute, or basically, and think about taking your whole life's work and condensing it down to a minute. So are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm talking to my 8-year-old self, and I would just tell him, be an open box and be water. What I mean by that is water takes a shape of the container that it's in. So instead of you trying to control your life, or even having somebody else control your life, take life as it comes. Do it all. Be open, like that open box I was saying. Be open to anything and everything. Get experience, see the world, meet all types of people. But most importantly, don't regret anything. Just do it. Like I told you earlier, just do it. Let's say something bad happens, don't regret it. If something good happens, don't regret it. Treat it all as an experience and just cherish and live life every day to the fullest, because that's the only way to find true meaning and purpose in life. It's going to add to your happiness. Set your expectations low, and that's something that you should always do. Set low expectations, and it's going to make you a more complete, versatile, and just a better person and happier person at the end of the day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that piece of advice. And also thank you so much for being on my podcast. I really enjoyed listening to your story of how you went through being an entrepreneur, and you gave a lot of great advice of how to deal with the 4 pillars and how to keep focused so that you can reach your goals. And I'm sure our listeners will be able to take what you said and be able to make their lives better. So thank you for what you do to the community, and thank you for sharing yourself with us today.
It's been a pleasure, Brett, and looking forward to talking to you again soon.
May your day be special. And there you have it, folks. That was my interview with Naresh. What an interesting story. I liked all his tales of resilience. Someone who kept on going, someone who sounds like he didn't really believe in himself at first, but thought, you know what would be fun? Starting my own business, especially after he discovered how hard it was, and he kept on going, and he ended up succeeding and kept on going at it. I really liked his idea of retirement. That is much better than like what I said last week is waiting for the Matrix to happen and seeing if they can make myself into a battery. Ha ha ha. But the reality is I liked his story of finding what you do and doing what you love. What I enjoy is, I believe it was Wayne Dyer, and it was somebody who talked about if you have a full-time job and you don't have the time and you're just living, maybe even 60-hour weeks working, that if you can spend just 15 to 30 minutes a day doing what you love and trying to build your business, that will at least put you ahead of what you were in 6 months from now. And Naresh seems to be the type of person who do such a thing. And now that he has the time to both start a business and to write that many books that he has is quite impressive. So it shows to me that living from his idea of no regrets of just doing it. But one thing I like to, especially during the minute of motivation, is the idea of when you're successful, no regrets. Because that is the Zen mentality, if you will. The successes and the failures, those things that we like, those things we don't like, not to hone on them too much, not to put too much value in your success or put too much value in your failure. Because when you do, that's when you can be trapped. And so living in a way where you are successful, and of course, you want to give yourself credit, you want to spend time celebrating, you want to be proud of yourself. It's not about not doing that. That's important. Too many people I find, especially in my coaching practice, tell me things like, if I find a goal, the first thing I'll do is find my next goal. They're not taking time to celebrate makes life seem like a burden. That's how you burn yourself out, folks. You need time to celebrate. But at the same time, not looking at a success and thinking about it over and over and over again to the point where you are Al Bundy saying that you scored 4 touchdowns in one game and living on that for the rest of your life. I mean, success is awesome. Success breeds success. Learning from failure will help you get success. So living in a way that doesn't put too much value into either, but learning from your successes and learning from your successes and learning from your failures, and honestly celebrating your successes and celebrating your failures, celebrating the fact that you tried. Most people don't. Most people will sit on their couches and complain, and you did it, even if you failed. It's like that scene in Little Miss Sunshine where the father was trying to be I believe he's trying to be a motivational speaker or write a book, and his book published, if I remember correctly, this just came up, but his book publisher came back and they rejected his book, and he was feeling sad, and I believe his father-in-law came up to him and just talked about how you tried, and that's what matters. You got up and you put your heart and soul into it, and you did it. And most people don't. Most people sit on the sidelines. So now is the time to get off the sidelines and go for it. The only thing you're going to regret in life are the things that you did not try, things that you did not do. If you want some more information about Naresh, you can find him at www.krishmediamarketing.com. Also at www.nareshvissa.com, NARESHVISSA.com, where you can also find him at LinkedIn, Naresh Vissa, Twitter, X, Naresh X, and Instagram, RNARESH15. You also can get on free copies of his books by getting on his email newsletter at www.nareshvissa.com, and then contact him through the site. Tell him that you found him through my podcast. You already see how many free books you can get out of him, folks. And that was my podcast number 31 in the books. Put that in your pipe and smoke it to whoever said I couldn't get 31 podcasts. I don't know why would anyone want to say that. I'm your host, Brett Dupree, champion of authentic joy, joyous expansion, life coach, catalyst of transformation, grand cult poobah of the Church of Awesome. If you want more information at me, go to joyousexpansion.com. There you can get a copy of my free gift to you, Breaking Out of the Prison of Fear. If you like this podcast, like, subscribe, review, comment, all that fun things, anything you can do to share it would be very much appreciated, and I appreciate you for getting this far anyway. You can find me on Instagram at Joyous Expansion. You can find me at Twitter at Joyous Expansion. Find me on Facebook at Increase Your Joy. Once again, I appreciate you for who you are. You made it this far in my podcast, and because of that, I love you. Because everybody who listens to me is awesome. But honestly, folks, just being able to put this out there, being able to put my heart and soul in each and every podcast and interviewing people and having people listen to it has been so much fun in the last year of doing this podcast. My first podcast came out a week from next week. So next week is my year anniversary of doing this. And so I will tell you that I love you for who you are. I appreciate you for listening to me and sticking by me. And I once again remind you to be love, to be joy, to be awesome. Now play my jingle.
JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Come and say hello to Brett Dupree. He is an inspirational life coach. Good for you and good for me. He turned my life from grey to blue. I'm sure he'll do the same for you. Get in touch and you'll see your life will change dramatically. JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Yeah.